My grandmother left me her house and a list of rules I must never break. When my grandmother died last October, I was surprised to learn she'd left me her house. We'd been close when I was young, but after my parents' divorce when I was 12, I'd only seen her a handful of times. Still, the lawyer assured me that she'd been quite specific. The house was to go to her grandson, Marcus Webb, along with everything inside it. The house sat on the outskirts of Millbrook, Tennessee, a good 3-hour drive from Nashville where I lived. I remembered it vaguely from childhood, a Victorian-era home with gingerbread trim and a wraparound porch surrounded by ancient oak trees. My memories were hazy but warm. The smell of her lavender soap, the creak of the porch swing, the way dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through lace curtains. I drove out on a Thursday afternoon, planning to spend the weekend assessing what needed to be done. The house was mine, free and clear, but I'd have to decide whether to sell it, rent it, or maybe fix it up as a weekend retreat. The key was under a stone rabbit in the garden, exactly where the lawyer said it would be. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and more worn. Paint peeled from the shutters and the porch sagged slightly, but structurally, it seemed sound. Inside, time had stopped somewhere around 1975. Floral wallpaper, shag carpeting, wood paneling in the den. It smelled like old paper and something floral, not quite lavender, but close. Dust sheets covered most of the furniture, and pale rectangles on the walls showed where pictures had been removed. On the kitchen table, held down by a ceramic rooster, was an envelope with my name on it, in my grandmother's spidery handwriting. Inside were 2 things, a handwritten letter and a list titled, "Rules for Living in This House." The letter read, "My dear Marcu, if you are reading this, then I am gone and the house is yours. I pray you will be wiser than I was and simply sell it. But I know you, curious like your mother, stubborn like your grandfather. If you choose to stay, even for a night, you must follow the rules. They are not suggestions. They are not the ramblings of a senile old woman. They are survival." The house has been in our family for 6 generations. With it comes certain obligations, responsibilities, burdens. I have carried them for 63 years. I had hoped they would die with me, but some things are stronger than hope. Please, Marcus, follow the rules. All my love, Grandma Rose. The second sheet was the list, written in the same careful handwriting. Rules for living in this house. Always lock the basement door at sunset. The key is on the hook beside it. No matter what you hear, do not unlock it until sunrise. The mirrors in the house are covered for a reason. Do not uncover them between midnight and 3 a.m. If you hear knocking at the back door after dark, do not answer it. She is not who she claims to be. The third step from the top of the stairs creaks. When going up to bed, always skip it. When coming down in the morning, always step on it. Keep fresh salt on all windowsills. Replace it every Sunday. The music box in the attic will play on its own sometimes. Let it finish. Never interrupt the song. If you find doors open that you know you closed, close them again without looking inside the room. The garden must be tended. Plant lavender each spring. She likes lavender. On the anniversary of her death, October 13th, leave a plate of food in the dining room before bed. It will be gone by morning. If the phone rings 3 times and stops, do not call the number back. The portrait in the parlor watches. This is normal. If it stops watching, leave the house immediately. Never, under any circumstances, dig in the northeast corner of the garden. I read the list 3 times, a chill creeping up my spine despite the warm afternoon. This had to be a joke, or maybe evidence of my grandmother's declining mental state in her final years. But the lawyer had said she'd been sharp until the end, still doing crossword puzzles and managing her own finances. I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the house, trying to reconcile my childhood memories with these strange rules. The basement door was indeed locked, with an old brass key hanging beside it. The mirrors throughout the house were covered with black cloth. The portrait in the parlor, a severe-looking woman in Victorian dress, did seem to watch me as I moved around the room, but that was just the artist's skill, surely. As sunset approached, I found myself standing by the basement door. This was ridiculous. I was a grown man, a rational person with a master's degree in engineering. I didn't believe in supernatural nonsense. But I locked the door anyway, just in case. That first night, I barely slept. The house was full of noises, settling wood, wind in the eaves, the ancient radiator system clanking to life. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to the sound of knocking at the back door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I lay frozen in bed, my grandmother's warning echoing in my mind. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Marcus?" A woman's voice muffled by the door. "Marcus, honey, it's me. Let me in." It sounded like my grandmother. I sat up, heart pounding. My grandmother was dead. I'd been to her funeral, seen her buried. But the voice... "Marcus, please. I'm so cold out here." I crept to the window and peered out at the back porch. A figure stood at the door, hunched and small. In the moonlight, I could see grey hair, a familiar housecoat. She turned toward the window, and I jerked back. The face was my grandmother's, but the eyes were black holes. Empty sockets that seemed to pull at the light around them. I stayed away from the windows after that. The next morning, I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Stress, unfamiliar surroundings, the power of suggestion from those ridiculous rules. But when I went to make coffee, I found muddy footprints on the back porch. Small, like an elderly woman's. They led to the door and then simply stopped. I spent the day in town asking subtle questions about my grandmother and the house. Most people were friendly but vague. Yes, they remembered Rose Webb. Lovely woman, kept to herself mostly. The house? Oh yes, been in the family for generations. Strange stories about that place, but then, old houses always have stories, don't they? It was Mrs. Patterson at the Historical Society who gave me the first real information. She was ancient herself, probably 90 if she was a day, with sharp blue eyes behind thick glasses. "Your grandmother was a good woman," she said, pulling out a folder of old photographs. Did what had to be done, just like her mother before her, and her grandmother before that. The Webb women have always been guardians. Guardians of what? I asked. She studied me for a long moment. "You're staying at the house?" I nodded. "Did she leave you the rules?" My blood ran cold. "You know about the rules. Everyone knows about the rules, young man. The question is whether you're following them." She showed me the photographs. My grandmother as a young woman standing in the garden. Her mother, my great-grandmother, on the same porch. And further back, more Webb women, all with the same determined expression, all standing before the same house. "What happened to the men in the family?" I asked, noticing their absence in most photos. Mrs. Patterson's face darkened. "The house chooses the women, usually. You're the first Webb man to inherit in... oh, must be 70 years. She leaned closer. "Your great-great-uncle Theodore got the house in 1953. Lasted 3 weeks before he broke Rule 12. What happened to him? Nobody knows for certain. They found his shovel in the northeast corner of the garden and his shoes at the edge of the hole he'd dug. Nothing else." She patted my hand with her papery fingers. "Follow the rules, Marcus. They're all that stands between us and... well, just follow the rules." I returned to the house as sunset approached, making sure to lock the basement door. That night, I heard movement below the floorboards, like something large shifting in the basement. Scratching sounds. Once, what might have been a laugh. On my third day, I decided to uncover one of the mirrors. Just one, in the downstairs bathroom, and only during daylight hours. The black cloth came away easily, revealing an antique mirror with a silver frame. My reflection looked normal, if a bit haggard from lack of sleep. I left it uncovered, telling myself I'd replace the cloth before midnight. At 11:45 p.m., I remembered the mirror. I hurried downstairs, cloth in hand, but stopped in the doorway. My reflection was there, but it wasn't copying my movements. It stood perfectly still, staring at me with an expression of absolute terror. Behind it, in the mirror's version of the bathroom, shadows moved. Shapes that weren't quite human pressed against the glass from the other side. I threw the cloth over the mirror and fled upstairs. The next morning, I found the bathroom door open. I knew I'd closed it. Following Rule 7, I pulled it shut without looking inside. But I could smell something from within, earth and copper, and something sweet, like rotting flowers. On my fifth night, the music box in the attic began to play at 3 a.m. The tune was hauntingly familiar, a lullaby my grandmother used to hum. I lay in bed, listening to the tinny notes drift down through the ceiling. When it finally stopped, I heard footsteps above me. Slow, measured steps, as if someone was dancing to remembered mew. By the end of the first week, I'd fallen into a routine. Lock the basement at sunset, keep the mirrors covered during the witching hours, skip the third stair at night, step on it in the morning, replace the salt on Sundays. I'd even started tending the garden, though I stayed well clear of the northeast corner. The knocking at the back door came every few nights. Sometimes it was my grandmother's voice, sometimes it was my mother's, though she was alive and well in Florida. Once, horrifyingly, it was my own voice, begging to be let in. I began to research the house's history. The local library had old newspapers on microfilm, and I spent hours scrolling through them. I found fragments of stories. In 1887, a traveling salesman had stayed overnight at the Webb house and was found the next morning, aged 30 years in a single night. In 1924, a group of children playing in the garden had reported seeing faces in the ground near the northeast corner. In 1953, Theodore Webb had disappeared. But it was a journal I found in the attic that provided the most answers. Hidden behind a loose board wrapped in oilcloth was a diary written by my great-great-great-grandmother, Constance Webb, dated 1862. The entries started normally enough: daily life, recipes, gossip. Then, April 3rd, found the opening today while planting the new rose bushes. Henry wanted to explore it, but something felt wrong. The air that came up from below smelled of sulfur and old death. April the 5th. Henry went down while I was at market. He won't speak of what he saw, won't eat, just sits and stares at the northeast corner of the garden. April 8th. Henry tried to go back down. I had Thomas help me fill the opening with stones and earth. Henry fought us. His strength was unnatural. His eyes weren't his own. April 12th. Henry is gone. Walked into the garden at sunset and simply sank into the earth. The ground opened for him and closed again. I can hear him at night, scratching at the basement walls from the outside. April 20th. It speaks with Henry's voice, but it is not Henry. It knows things, promises things. I have devised rules to keep it at bay. The mirrors show its true face. The salt burns it. The locked door holds it. But it is patient. It is so very patient. May 1st. I understand now. This house is a prison. We are the wardens. The thing below must never be freed. I will teach my daughter the rules. She will teach hers. This is our burden, our curse, our sacred duty. If you are reading this, You are a web. You are bound. Follow the rules. Guard the prison. And whatever you do, never dig in the northeast corner of the garden. I sat in the dusty attic, the journal trembling in my hands. Below me, through the floorboards, I heard the music box begin to play again, though I hadn't wound it. That night, the knocking at the back door was different. Instead of my grandmother's voice, I heard a man's, cultured, old-fashioned, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Mr. Webb," the voice said, "I believe we should talk. You've read Constance's journal. You know what I am, what this place is. Surely we can come to an arrangement." I didn't answer. "The women of your line have been so stubborn," the voice continued. "But you're different. I can sense it. Curious. Rational. You don't believe in superstitions, do you? Why don't we discuss this like civilized beings?" The doorknob rattled. "I could show you such things, Marcus. The universe is so much stranger and more wonderful than you imagine. Your prison is my prison too. We could help each other." The voice was persuasive, reasonable. I found myself walking toward the door. "That's it," the voice encouraged. "Just turn the key. We have so much to discuss." My hand was on the doorknob when I heard another sound, the creak of the third stair from the top. But I was alone in the house. I jerked my hand back as if burned. The voice at the door changed, becoming something inhuman, full of rage and hunger. The door shook in its frame as something massive threw itself against it. The hinges groaned, but then silence. I found footprints on the stairs the next morning, muddy like the ones on the porch, but these led from the third stair up to the attic. The music box was playing when I opened the attic door, and beside it sat a figure in a rocking chair. It was my grandmother, not the thing that knocked at the back door, but somehow, impossibly, her. Translucent, like morning mist, but undeniably her. She smiled at me sadly and pointed to the music box. As the last notes played, she faded away. But on the seat where she'd been sitting was another note. "The rules are not enough anymore. It grows stronger. The prison weakens. You must choose. Stay and guard, or break the chain. If you leave, burn the house, salt the earth, let the town forget. But know that it will find another way. It always does. Or stay. Learn the deeper rules. Become the guardian. The choice is yours. Remember, we do not guard against it. We guard the world from it." I've been here 6 months now. I've learned the deeper rules, the ones my grandmother couldn't write down. I know why the mirrors must stay covered. They're not windows, they're doors. I know what the music box summons, not ghosts, guardians. I know what lies beneath the northeast corner of the garden, not a thing, a gateway. The knocking still comes, but now I recognize it for what it is, a test, a probe, a search for weakness. The voice changes, but the hunger remains constant. I've made my choice. I tend the garden. I maintain the rules. I've even added new ones as the old protections weaken. The town thinks I'm eccentric, but they leave me alone. They know, on some level, what this house represents. What would happen if its prisoner ever escaped? Sometimes I wonder if I should have burned it all down when I had the chance. But then I think of Constance, of my grandmother, of all the Webb women who sacrificed their lives to keep the world safe. From what lies below. The house is my inheritance, but it's also my responsibility, my burden, my purpose. And late at night, when the knocking comes, and the voice pleads and threatens and cajoles, I hold fast to the rules, because they're all that stands between the world and the hungry darkness that waits beneath the garden. If you're reading this, perhaps you're the next Webb to inherit this curse. If so, remember, follow the rules, all of them, even the ones that seem to make no sense, especially those. And whatever you do, whatever it promises, whatever you think you might find, never, ever dig in the northeast corner of the garden. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. But I haven't told you everything. I haven't told you about what happened on October 13th, the anniversary of my grandmother's death, or about the night I broke rule number 4, or about what I finally saw in the basement when the door swung open on its own. October 13th came with an early frost. I'd been living in the house for 3 weeks by then, growing oddly comfortable with its rhythms and demands. That morning I drove to town for groceries, making sure to buy extra for the plate I would need to leave in the dining room. Mrs. Patterson was at the grocery store. She took one look at my cart, the roast chicken, the green beans, the apple pie, and nodded approvingly. "She always was partial to apple pie," she said quietly. "Made with cinnamon and just a touch of nutmeg." "How do you know what my grandmother liked?" I asked. She gave me a strange look. "Oh, honey, I'm not talking about Rose." That evening, I prepared the plate carefully, arranging everything just as my grandmother might have for a Sunday dinner. I set it at the head of the dining room table with proper silverware and a cloth napkin. The house felt different as darkness fell, expectant, almost eager. I locked myself in my bedroom and tried to sleep. At exactly midnight, I heard the dining room chair scrape against the floor. Footsteps, light and measured, circled the table, the clink of silverware on china, and then, most unnervingly, a satisfied sigh. When I came down in the morning, the plate was empty, cleaned so thoroughly it gleamed. But there were fingerprints on the rim, small, delicate, and stained with what looked like grave dirt. That night, emboldened by surviving the anniversary, I made a terrible mistake. I forgot about the third stair. I was exhausted, having spent the day researching more of the house's history at the county records office. I'd found the original deed from 1798, along with a surveyor's note that mentioned unusual geological formations on the property. Distracted by these discoveries, I climbed the stairs automatically, my foot landing squarely on the third step from the top. The creak was louder than usual, echoing through the house like a gunshot. Everything went silent. Even the ever-present settling of old wood stopped. The temperature plummeted so quickly I could see my breath. Then, every door in the house slammed open at once. Not just opened, slammed with such force that pictures fell from walls and knickknacks toppled from shelves. Through each doorway, I could see not the rooms I knew, but somewhere else. Somewhere wrong. The guest bedroom door showed a vast cavern lit by phosphorescent fungi. The bathroom revealed an endless corridor lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of me, some old, some young, some not quite human. The attic door opened onto a starless void, where things with too many angles drifted in the darkness. But it was my bedroom door that showed the worst thing. It opened onto the garden, but not the garden of today. This was the garden as it must have been in 1862, and in the northeast corner, a hole gaped like a wound in the earth. From its depths, something was climbing out. It wore Henry Webb's shape, but poorly, like an ill-fitting suit. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, as if it was still learning how joints worked. When it turned toward the house, its face was a constantly shifting mass of features, Henry's, my grandmother's, mine, and others I didn't recognize. All the Webbs who had ever lived in this house, stolen and worn like masks. "Found you," it said with a dozen voices. I ran. Down the stairs, remembering to step on the third one this time. Through the kitchen, out the back door, the same door I was never supposed to open after dark. But outside seemed safer than in with those impossible doorways. The garden was different in the darkness. Paths that should have been straight twisted and curved. The oak trees leaned in, their branches reaching like grasping fingers. And from the northeast corner came a sound like breathing, deep, rhythmic inhalations that made the ground pulse. Behind me, the thing wearing dead faces emerged from the house. It moved more smoothly now, more confidently, as if my mistake had given it strength. "You broke the pattern," it said conversationally. "The rules are void. The compact is ended. I'm free to reclaim what was always mine." I backed away, but the garden seemed to be shrinking, funneling me toward the northeast corner. The breathing grew louder, and I could see the earth there beginning to crack and split. That's when the music box began to play. The tune drifted from the attic window, clear and sweet in the night air. The thing paused, its stolen faces twisting in annoyance. Around me, the garden began to shimmer, and I saw them. All of them. Every web who had ever guarded this house, translucent as morning mist but standing firm. My grandmother stood closest, her face sad but determined. Beside her, a woman who must have been Constance, still in her 1860s dress. Behind them, generations of guardians, all humming along with the music box's tune. "The rules are not void," my grandmother said, though her lips didn't move. The words appeared in my mind like remembered conversation. "You stumbled, but you did not fall. The compact holds." The thing snarled, lunging toward me, but the ghostly webs moved as one. They formed a barrier between us, their translucent forms growing brighter with each note from the music box. Where the creature touched them, it recoiled as if burned. "Back to your prison," Constance commanded. "Back to the dark. The gateway remains sealed." The thing retreated, step by unwilling step, toward the house. The impossible doorways were closing one by one, reality reasserting itself. With a final shriek of rage, it was pulled through the dining room door, which slammed shut behind it. The music box played its last note and fell silent. The ghostly guardians began to fade. But my grandmother lingered a moment longer. "The rules exist for a reason," she said. And this time, her lips did move. "But now you understand why. It's not just about keeping it in, Marcus. It's about keeping yourself out of its reach. Every rule is a thread in a web. Break one and the others strain. Break too many." She faded before finishing, but I understood. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the porch, afraid to go back inside. When sunrise finally came, I found the house exactly as it should be. All the doors were closed. The mirrors remained covered. The only sign of the night's events was a new crack in the dining room door frame and muddy footprints on the third stair. Footprints that matched my own shoes exactly. The next week, I discovered why we don't unlock the basement door until sunrise. It had been a quiet few days. I'd reinforced my adherence to the rules, even adding extra precautions. More salt, blessed items from 3 different churches, iron nails above each doorframe. I was beginning to feel secure again. Then at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, I woke to the sound of my own voice coming from the basement. "Help me," it called. "Please, God, someone help me. I'm trapped down here." I sat up in bed, heart racing. The voice was perfect. Exactly my tone, my inflection, even the slight rasp I'd developed from a recent cold. "The door locked behind me," my voice continued. "My phone's dead. Please, anyone." I crept to the top of the basement stairs, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to help. Through the door, I could hear movement, frantic pacing, the rattle of the doorknob from the other side. "I know someone's there," my voice said, closer now, just on the other side of the door. "I can hear you breathing. Please, just unlock the door. I've been down here for hours." My hand moved toward the key before I caught myself. Rule number 1. No matter what you hear. The pleading continued for an hour, growing more desperate, more convincing. It knew things only I would know. Childhood memories, recent conversations, the password to my laptop. It begged, threatened, reasoned. It even tried reverse psychology, claiming it understood why I wouldn't open the door, that it was probably for the best, that it would just wait quietly for sunrise. As dawn approached, the voice changed, became older, raspier. "You can't keep me down here forever," it said, and now it sounded like Henry Webb. Every sunrise weakens the seal. Every sunset I grow stronger. One day, boy, one day you'll turn that key a second too early. And then... silence. When I finally unlocked the door at 7:15 a.m., 15 minutes after sunrise just to be safe, the basement was empty. But the concrete floor was covered in scratch marks, as if something with claws had tried to dig through. And on the wall, written in what looked like coal, were the words, "The sun sets earlier each day." Winter was coming. I've learned more since then. Learned that the music box doesn't just summon guardians, it holds them, gives them form and purpose after death. Learned that the portrait in the parlor doesn't just watch, it remembers, recording every guardian's successes and failures. Learned that the salt doesn't just repel, it burns, leaving scars on things that shouldn't be able to scar. I've also learned why the Webb women were usually chosen. They're stronger, Mrs. Patterson finally told me. More resistant to the whispers, the promises, the slow corruption that seeps from below. The Webb men who inherit rarely last long. "But you're different," she said, studying me with those sharp blue eyes. "You've got some of your grandmother's steel in you. Question is, will it be enough?" I've been here a year now. The rules have become second nature, but also more complex. I've had to add new ones as the old protections fray. Rule 13. During the winter solstice, burn sage in every room. The darkness is strongest when the sun is weakest. Rule 14. If you see wet footprints leading from the basement to your bedroom, do not follow them back. Sleep in the parlor that night. Rule 15. The thing below lies. Always. Even when it tells the truth, it lies. Some nights are harder than others. Some nights, the knocking comes from every door, every window. Some nights, I see faces in the covered mirrors, pressing against the cloth. Some nights, the basement door rattles so hard I fear the hinges will give way. But I hold the line. I maintain the watch. Because I've seen what happens when the rules break down entirely. Last month, a developer came by, interested in buying the property. He was pushy, dismissive of my refusal to sell. He came back after dark, uninvited, with what he called a more generous offer. I tried to warn him, told him to come back in the morning, but he laughed, said he didn't have time for rural superstitions. He walked right through the garden to the back door, knocked 3 times. The door opened for him. I found his car the next morning, still running in the driveway. His shoes were in the garden, placed neatly at the edge of a shallow depression in the northeast corner. The depression that hadn't been there the night before. The police investigated, of course. But people disappear all the time, they said. No signs of foul play. Probably just abandoned his car and left town. These city types do strange things sometimes. But I know better. On quiet nights, I can hear him down there with the others, knocking on the basement walls from the wrong side, adding his voice to the chorus that begs to be let in. The house takes care of its own problems in its own way. So I stay. I guard. I remember. Because someone has to. Because the alternative, the thing getting free, spreading beyond this house, this garden, is unthinkable. If you're reading this, perhaps you're considering buying a charming Victorian house on the outskirts of Millbrook, Tennessee. Perhaps you've inherited it. Perhaps you're just curious about the Webb family and their strange legacy. Take my advice. Don't come after dark. Don't dig in the garden. Don't break the rules. And if you hear knocking at your door on a cold October night and a voice claims to be someone you know and trust, someone you love, someone you've lost, remember that the thing below has had centuries to perfect its mimicry. Remember that it lies. Remember that some doors once opened can never be closed. And remember that somewhere in a house held together by rules and will and the stubborn refusal to let darkness win, someone stands guard. For now. But I'm getting older. The whispers are getting louder, and winter is coming. The sun sets earlier each day. Found among the papers of Marcus Webb, missing since October 13th of this year. The house remains empty. The basement door stands open. The rules, scattered on the floor, are barely legible through the mud and scratch marks. If you inherit this house, burn it. Salt the earth. Let the town forget. Some prisons are meant to be destroyed, not maintained. Unless, of course, it's already too late.